Welcome to Bits and Bytes Extended Version. In this episode, we're going to look at creating class newsletters on Book Creator. So let's get started. All right, let's get started. So the first thing you really need to think about when using Book Creator as a newsletter is what type of newsletter you're going to have, how often you're going to send it home, and who's going to do the reporting. As far as who's going to do the reporting, you really want to think about the age of your students and the capability of your students, as well as the devices you have. It might be the sort of thing where you, as the teacher, creates the newsletter and you and the students together maybe edit it every Friday afternoon before it gets sent home. It might be the sort of newsletter where you, as the teacher, set up the newsletter and create a template, and you then have special helper students work on creating the weekly newsletter within that template to send home. Or it could be the kind of newsletter where your students are older and you assign each student a week during the year, and it's up to them to design what that page is going to look like and what they want to include on it. So, really think before you start about what you want to have as your newsletter, but know that for all of those options, you certainly can use Book Creator. So let's dive into a sample that I've already created for for Miss Tobin's class at Eagle Harbor. So this then is the start of their book, the main page. And I'll just go back a step here. When you start your newsletter book, because it is really a book you're creating with newsletter pages in it, the first thing you want to do is create new book. And there are 6 choices there, but I'm going to recommend that you always go with landscape comic. The reason for that is it gives you the most space, and there are some extra functionalities that come with comic that are nice. You can also always go into the templates and have a look. They do have a newspaper template that you certainly could use. And they do have a yearbook template that's kind of fun, especially if you're looking at having a yearbook for your students at the end of the year. But you can just as easily create in blank books. I like the fact that blank books gives you a lot of your own creativity. So I would always choose landscape comic, which is what I've done here for Miss Tobin's class. So you'll see on the cover, all I've done is put the teacher's name and class newsletter. You could put Division 13's 2023-2024 class newsletter, whatever works for you, obviously. I did include a little logo of the school just to help sort of brand the newsletter. And then in this case, a picture of the school, although it's a bit fuzzy, so maybe maybe you can go out and take a better picture than the one I have, or maybe you want a student drawing to go on the front, or whatever you like. It's really up to you. So you want to have some kind of a title page. From there, what I did with Miss Tobin's newsletter is I left a blank page here for her to put a picture of the class. And you can see I've put whatever division it is. And then this, when I click on it, is a placeholder for a photo. And so I can click this little button here and I can go and choose a photo I've already taken, or I can use my camera on my computer to take a photo. Might be kind of hard to fit the whole class in, so you're probably going to use a photo you've already taken. The nice thing about setting up this type of space in the newsletter is that the button lets kids know what it is that they're kind of looking to add in. And you can see I've locked it here so that they can't make it bigger or move it around. Now, that might be something you want to do if you're working with younger students, and it might be something you don't want to do. And I will show you how to do all of this as we go along. So that's the first page. The second page, I put room for Miss Tobin to add in her weekly schedule so that parents know, what day library is and what day gym is so they can bring their runners, all those sorts of things. So would just be a simple screenshot of her weekly schedule that she could add into here, and then parents have access to that. The next page is what I like to think of as the weekly page. In this case, I've set up a template for Deb's class to use, but again, if you're working with older students, you could basically just tell them, the page needs to have the date, the week date, needs to have a picture or video of something we did in class, and it needs to have some writing about what went on in class, what you remember, what you were excited about. Really depends on what you want to tell the parents. But I think having the student's voice in this is really a cool way to do it. So in this case, what I've added on here is a little box telling the kids where they put the week of. So they would just double click on this and add in their typing and then say done. So they might say the week of September 11th, 2023, and say done. Then this is where they could do the bulk of their writing. And they can either type right in here, there is a basic spell checker, or they could write it in Google Docs, depending on the age of your students, and copy and paste it into here. You'll see that they have some of the basic tools for word processing: bold, italicize, underline. You can put links in. So if they want to link to a website that they're using, like their Math IXL site, to let parents know where it is or something like that. You can change the text color, you can highlight, you can have lists. You can strike through, and then you've got a few math functionalities here. And then down here, you have access, to all of the different accents and things, which is awesome if you're teaching at one of our French immersion schools. And you've got some math numeracy sorts of symbols here. The other thing you can do if you're working with really littles is you can actually have them click here on the microphone and they can speak, and what will happen is this will type out what they're saying. Now, it might not be perfect. You might have to go through with them afterwards and do a bit of editing, but it is a way that you can get this done with a student voice, even when you've got really littles. So then once they're done work, of course, you can click on this. Now, if you find that the writing takes up more than the page and you need to change the font or anything, whenever these little working dots are around something in Book Creator, you can go to the Inspector or Information button. And here you can change the size of the font, the color, the type of the font, and play around with it a fair amount. So here I've left 2 spaces for pictures. In my mind, this picture could be a picture of the student who did the reporting that week, or the students. I think Deb's going to have them work in pairs. And then this is a placeholder either for a video or a picture of something that happened in class that week. So this is something that's just a really basic template that you can set up. And the other thing that's really neat about this is if you go into pages here, you can see that all I've done is just copy that page over and over and over again for Deb so that her students have the same template. Now they can change the background color, they can change the font, they can put in different pictures and things, but it gives them an idea, since they're still quite young, of what that newsletter is going to look like. The other thing you can do here is if the kids accidentally go and they do all their typing for the first week of school in here, you can easily move that page to where it needs to be. So you can play around a fair amount in here. If they add a bunch of extra pages they weren't supposed to add, you can easily delete them. So once you've got that done, let's say you've got the first week of school finished with your students and you want to share it with parents, the next step, and I've already done it with this book, but the next step is to go here and you're going to click on this little share button. And what you want to do is publish your book online. So this would say publish online, not published, because I've already published this one. And what you want to do, you want to give it a title, a quick description, doesn't need to be much, and you want to keep it private. You don't want to push public because if you push public, this can be searchable and found on the internet by anybody. We want this to stay private. Um, you can decide whether you want to let other teachers mix or remix it. Maybe other teachers in your school want to use the same template you use. That's really up to you. And then you're going to want parents to have the link. So here you're going to copy the link, and that's what you would send home to parents. Now, this link remains a live link so that all year long, as you update and add new pages to the newsletter, parents can keep coming back to that link. So you can suggest to parents that they bookmark the link. And then the other thing I think it's important to do is to talk with parents about the fact that this newsletter is about their children and the other children in the class, and it's not something to be shared out to people all over the world or posted on social media or any of those things. You also want to be careful that if you have any parents who have said to you that they do not want their child's likeness or image used at school, that they don't appear in any of the pictures or video. They could still do writing. They could still certainly publish their page of the newsletter. You just might not put their full name. Well, you certainly wouldn't ever put full name first and last, but you might not put their name, and you certainly wouldn't put their picture or their likeness or a video of them in this book. I think that's probably about it. In the little analytics button up here, you can see how many reads you've had and where. This one's been read a big one time, I think just by Deb in one country. But eventually that will get bigger. And that's kind of fun to show the kids as the year goes on. So that is the creation of a class newsletter. Really simple to do. In terms of how the kids can add to it, there are a number of ways that you can have the students add to your newsletter. Having students edit the newsletter is fairly simple. When you create, as a teacher, when you create a new book inside your class library, we'll imagine this is my class library up here. The students are all able to see the book and, depending on what settings you've put in, interact with it. So, depending on the age of your students, again, if they were quite young, I think I would probably project this book up on the screen and as a class work together to edit the newsletter each week, or maybe work with a small group of students each week by your desk. You could also let group of a few trusted students use your device to add on to the newsletter. They could also create their own book of the same size and just build their one page. And this is certainly how I would do it if I were working with older, more independent students. And then what you can do as a teacher is go to this little Timbit here, the snowman, click on it, and then combine books. And what you can do is combine the page that they've made into this book of yours. You just combine. Right now, I don't really have anything I'm going to combine, but you would take, let's say the students had made a book right here. You would take that book and click on it and combine the two books. And that would then add their page into your book. That way they can be working on their own device or on a classroom iPad or something and not actually um, interfering with your book, if that makes sense. So hopefully that has given you some ideas for the type of newsletter you might want to publish with your class. How many times you publish, once a week, once a month, once a term, is really up to you. But I would say that um, communicating with your parent population ends up, I think, benefiting you in the long run. You get fewer emails about what's going on and when do we do this and how do we do that from parents if they're receiving regular updates from you. So hopefully that's been helpful and you now have the tools to create your own class newsletter. Thanks for watching.